Welcome to Your Big Career Move, where your host, Yeshim Nicholson, chats to people about their big career moves, uncovers their motivations, their fears, their successes, and everything in between. Be inspired by their stories, and if you're thinking of making your own big career move, head over to yescareercoaching.com. If you enjoy this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Welcome back. I'm Yeshim Nicholson from Your Big Career Move. And today I'm talking to Sarah Mannone. I think I've pronounced that right, I hope. Who's got a really great story to tell, and I can't wait to share it with you. I was just telling her that I'm really excited to speak to her because actually she's I enjoy speaking to all my interviewees, but I really love hearing stories of people who've become very, very successful at what they do. They've had this amazing career and then something happens and the whole trajectory changes. And that's what happened to Sarah. So Sarah, thank you so much. Welcome. And I'm so excited that you've joined me from New York today.
Thank you for having me.
And if it's okay, we'll start talking about what you were doing before you made your big career move, please.
Yeah, sure. So I worked in a marketing agency. I started in 2006 and I was there for 16 years. I began as an account executive. I was mid-20s and I worked myself up the ladder, so to speak, within that organization. It was a small marketing agency, but full of great growth opportunities and client opportunities. Worked with an incredible creative team there, really enjoyed my experience there. And when I left, I was the executive vice president. I was co-running the business with the founder and president of the agency. Mm-hmm. And I was on a path to buy into the business or buy the business outright. And then in 2020 and through 2021, I made the decision to completely change careers.
So I don't think you're alone in the fact that you, I guess, reassessed what you were doing. And I'm guessing it might have something to do with COVID. When you say 2020, that's the first thing that springs to mind. So is that what happened for you? What was going on?
Yeah, I think it was tied to COVID to some degree. My role within the agency was predominantly client facing. And so I was traveling a lot, meeting with clients, helping to sort of facilitate discussions around their strategy and really drive sort of big visionary high-level strategy for some F100 and F500 companies. So I was on the road a lot. I really enjoyed it. I spoke at industry events and conferences and had all kinds of opportunities to do those sorts of things and really got a lot of energy out of those engagements. And so when COVID came around and I'd been remote since 2011 when I left Illinois, where the agency was headquartered, and moved to New York. So I'd been remote for a while. That wasn't so much an adjustment, but adjusting to really kind of doing my job completely at my desk behind my computer screen. Mm-hmm. And so that really kind of made me re-examine what the role required and what the future could potentially look like for me. Mm-hmm. And then in COVID too, I had a lot of time to really kind of think about where I wanted my life to go. I wasn't on the road as much anymore. I wasn't sort of moving in a million different directions all the time. And when you stop doing that and have a chance to really think about where you want your life to go, you start asking yourself some pretty existential questions. Oh. And that was what my experience was like. And so for me, I grew up in the Midwest of the United States, so farm country, so to speak. Mm-hmm. My grandfather owned a small farm. My parents were gardeners all my life. And so I really thought about my passion for gardening and thought, could I do something with that? And I decided to leave the agency and start a landscape and garden design studio. So I'm in the process now of building that.
That's really exciting. And I really want to hear more about that. Before we go there, can we talk about, you said that you were starting to ask yourself all these questions, existential questions. Can you remember what those questions were?
Yeah, in part, I was thinking, okay, I've been doing this for 15, 16 years, a decade and a half.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in my early 40s. So I was kind of debating what do I want to do with the next decade and a half, so to speak, was coming up for me. And also thinking about when I look back on my career, what will I have given to the world? Like, what's the mark or the legacy that I will have left behind? And there is the opportunity to leave behind a mark or a legacy in whatever you do within the world of the marketing agency. I always was very proud of being able to make my client a success within their organization. I was proud to help manage a business that employed 20 plus people and what that meant for them and their families. But I think for me, the environment has always been a really big concern and passion of mine, education, family. And I really think about this new world that I've entered into as an opportunity to bring families together, to create spaces where community can happen, where entertainment, relaxation, memory making can happen. And I think there's also something to being able to educate my clients about what their decisions mean for the world around them and what the opportunities are for them to utilize, but also respect and appreciate the world around them. And so that to me felt like a more meaningful legacy for me personally to be able to leave behind. So I think that was really important to me. And also doing something I genuinely love doing. I enjoyed my role within the marketing agency. I was still am very proud of what I accomplished there. But I think it was really time for me to dig into something that I was genuinely passionate about and enjoyed, regardless of sort of external circumstances. Yeah, I think all of those were the questions that were percolating through my mind in 2020.
Okay. And were you verbalizing those questions? Were you like bouncing those off somebody, or was it literally just going on in your head?
No, I was bouncing them around with my husband and talking through it with him. And yeah, I mean, I think at one point he made the good point of saying something like, when you're 65 and you retire, ideally, is this what you want to look back on and have said you've done? So while I was happy with what I was doing, I just knew that in the end there was another chapter for me to write, and that's what I'm writing now. So
love it. So you're making this sound very easy, that you were like, I had these doubts and I wanted to do some other stuff, so then I just did it. How easy was this decision actually for you, and what made it easier for you to make? And how did you were there any fears around handing in your notice, and how did you overcome those? Can you talk us through all of that?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, it is not an easy decision. Not at all. I mean, I grew up in this marketing agency, right? So I was there through my mid-20s into my 40s. I really did kind of grow into myself and grow up there, and genuinely loved and cared about the entire team. So leaving there was a huge decision and a very painful one to work through, to be honest. And being that I had sort of envisioned either buying into or buying the company, it was huge. It's
like a complete opposite, isn't it?
Yeah, a path that was known and established, and a company with a track record and a book of business, to creating something from the ground up. So obviously that is a huge decision to work through. And yeah, the financial stability and the questions around, can I do this? How do I do this? Will I be successful? How long will it take for me to start making money again? All of those questions and insecurities kind of came up in making the decision. So it took me probably a year to make the decision and another 6 to 8 months to execute on that decision. So it took a while, and it took a lot of talking to people and friends and other entrepreneurs and other people who had made, big career transitions. It took a lot of time. And you know, when I eventually did hand in my notice and have that conversation, that was a challenging one to kind of work through, but you know, it was really important to me to handle with a certain gentleness, a certain amount of care and authenticity. And it was easier to have that conversation than I had anticipated because I had spent the time really thinking through and really felt in my heart of hearts that it was the right decision. But it is challenging. Yeah,
I can imagine. When you say you spoke to lots of people about this and talked it through, how deliberate were you about who you spoke to, about what was going on in your head?
I was deliberate in that I spoke to people who either knew me personally and I had been friends with for some time, or people who I could really respect whatever feedback was going to come my way. Okay. Because I think when you're going through something like this, it can be tempting to talk to a lot of people and get a lot of different insights, but you also have to be prepared for the fact that you might hear something you don't like, right? You might hear how hard it is, how long it's going to take, how challenging it can be. And so for me, I had, living in New York, there's a number of friends within our kind of cohort that have started their own businesses or are entrepreneurs in some way. So talking to them was helpful. Talking to people in the industry, either on the marketing side or on the landscape design side, who had made transitions and could really lend advice. And I found that the community was really open and welcoming to me and very helpful, but helpful and realistic in the advice that they offered. And so, I tried to be kind of deliberate with it. It was something so deeply personal that I didn't want to shout it from the mountaintops yet. I wasn't ready for that. So I kind of tried to protect my little, my little idea. And I took the stuff that really sank in and stuff that didn't at that time. I let go, and I look back on it from time to time and say, okay, now's where that piece of advice was particularly helpful. But you can't make decisions. You can't move forward with, too many ideas and voices in your head. You kind of have to say, these are the things that I'm going to take and listen to and learn from. And I'm going to use those to get to the next step. And then once I get to that step, I'll take the next set of ideas and insights and I'll apply those and I'll get to the next step from there. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Very, very strategic. I like it. You can tell you come from the world of strategy.
So, yeah, exactly.
So within your network of people that you were discussing your ideas with, and you don't need to name or shame them, you don't need to say exactly who they were, but was there anybody that was like, Sarah, this is not a good idea, you should not be doing this, you need to rethink things?
Not a single one. Not a single one. Every time I told people what I was thinking about, I couldn't help but just get so excited and really light up when I started talking about it. And I think whether people picked up on that and edited themselves accordingly, I don't know. But I think people just saw that I was genuinely excited about this. And so people were really supportive and, really kept helping me find parallels between what I had done within the agency and what I was about to do in this new venture. And the more I could kind of identify these parallels, kind of crystallize those in my mind, the more achievable everything felt. But not a single person ever said, are you crazy? What are you thinking? You should absolutely not do this. Which I think, I don't know, it just gives you the courage to try. So.
Definitely. And I think this is a massive generalization, but from listening to podcasts, from talking to people that I know in the States, there does seem to be this entrepreneurial spirit, if you like. And I guess it comes from people crossing to the other side of the world with just a suitcase to start a new life, generations back. And I guess that's sort of in the DNA of a lot of people in the States. And I think, I don't know, I find that really exciting that people are just willing to give things a go and encourage others to follow suit. So I think that's really quite cool.
And I think at the end of the day, it's just a question of what's the worst that can happen. And the worst that can happen is it doesn't work. And I still have all the skills that I spent the previous 16 years building, and a new set of skills that I've spent the last 2 years building. So, you know, there are always going to be opportunities out there and places to land. So as long as you can kind of understand for yourself what the worst case scenario is and be okay with that, there's really not a reason to not try. So
I couldn't agree more with you. There's always something to fall back on.
Yeah, always.
So in that vein, what was your biggest fear when you handed in that resignation letter?
I think my fear was, will I regret this decision? Will I regret not staying on this path that I have had so much success along? Will I regret the opportunity to own a business? Will I not be successful, and will I be judged for that down the line? I think that was a big one for me. Yeah, I think that was really the hard part. Will I regret this? And there's a television show that I grew up watching with my family called The West Wing, which is an American political TV drama.
Yeah.
And there's a character in there that says a line in one of the episodes that says, "We don't always know how it ends, and that doesn't mean we don't try." And so I just kind of kept that in the back of my mind, and I'm happy to say I have no regrets.
Yes.
And I don't think you can ever regret something that is so meaningful to you, because you're always going to be able to make meaning from that. You know, you're always going to be able to derive some insight, value, experience that is beneficial to you. And so, yeah, I don't think it's possible to regret this decision, actually.
Yeah, I love that. And so you had this inkling that you wanted to do something that was around landscaping. So how did you crystallize your idea of what you were going to do?
Well, I was kind of debating these existential questions, as I said earlier. I really kept coming back to what did I enjoy as a child? Like, what did I enjoy doing as a kid? What were the best times that I had? And I kept landing on the same answer, that it was the best times I had as a kid were on my grandfather's farm or in my parents' garden. And there are all kinds of ways to make something out of that, whether you decide to start a small farm, whether you decide to actually get into gardening and offering gardening services. For me, I've always really enjoyed looking at a space and thinking about what I can do with it and rethinking it. Like, there are people who can walk into a home and do the same thing, right? They can walk in and be like, oh, we'll just tear down this wall and we'll move the kitchen over here and move the bedrooms to the back. And I can't do that quite as well, but I can do that when it comes to outdoor spaces. And I thought I also kind of thought about when I was growing up and listening to my mom, who was a nurse, say, while we were working in the garden next to each other, she would say, you know, man, I really should have been a gardener. Oh, I should have been a gardener. Oh, I should have been a gardener. And I just kept coming back to this idea that she had spent her career in nursing, and she had had a lot of success and a lot of incredible experiences there, but there was always something in her that felt like she hadn't pursued that. And so I decided to focus on the design piece of landscaping and gardening, and really found that I could kind of craft the same role that I had within the agency within this new context, which is to say that it's meeting with clients to assess what their needs and goals are. It's looking at a opportunity and coming up with a strategy that meets that opportunity and meets those goals. And then facilitating the parties involved in making that come to life. So it's leading, you know, a landscape designer in that vision and kind of giving them the creative direction. It's managing contractors that can come in to do builds and installations. And then it's getting my hands dirty at the end to go in and put the plants in, which is like the smallest part of the whole pie. So, so once I started kind of thinking about that and how to kind of craft a very similar role for myself, it really all started to kind of click.
Is
into
there a
place.
part of you, just going back to what you said about your mum, I don't know, I love that story. Is there a part of you that is conscious that you're living out your mum's dream?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I kind of love that.
Mm.
You know, I love that even as a kid, I was picking up on that. Like, I think that's kind of, I don't know, I think that's kind of magical that even as kids, we're picking up on these cues around us.
Always, yeah.
My mom and I have a very close relationship. And yet I would not have 20 years ago thought I might be living out my mom's dream one day. And I feel like, I don't know, it's just, her dream for me would always just be for me to be happy. Her dream for herself, and seeing those two things come together in what I'm doing now. I haven't actually had this conversation with her, but I'm thinking it must be pretty rewarding for her, or special for her in some way. I mean, my grandfather was, in addition to being a farmer, was a professional rose gardener. He tended to the rose gardens of these like old large estates. And he passed that down to my mom, and my mom passed that down to me. And now I'm taking and doing something slightly different with it. So it's just, I don't know, it's sweet. It's really lovely.
Really sweet. And it just sounds like it's something you're meant to be doing somehow. Like it was just, I mean, it's so cheesy, but it's like your destiny, that it was kind of, you know, it's come down the generations, and and you found your way back to it. I think that's really special.
Exactly. Yeah. Finding your way back to this thing that was there, that maybe you overlooked in the past.
Yeah.
And I think it's also been very validating. As I've been working through this process, I also took a job temporarily in the green industry, just to kind of start making some connections, making connections, networking, spending time in this space. And as I did that, I heard a lot like, it seems like you were meant to do this. Yeah. And I really started to feel that validation that I was on the right path.
Which is it's so lovely when that happens, isn't it? Because you think, up until then, you think, well, maybe this is just a completely bonkers idea. But actually, when it starts being reflected back to you from other people, it's quite reassuring, isn't it?
It is.
So one of the main obstacles that people have, that I work with, that they feel they can't overcome, is that they say, I've worked so hard to get to where I am. You know, I've climbed that ladder that you talked about earlier. I've done really well for myself. I can see the vision of where I can be in 5-10 years time. It's very clear. Right. It's not obscure. So actually going now and following my dreams of doing XYZ seems really counterintuitive, and feels like I'm throwing away these decades of experience that I've built up.
Yeah.
So I have my take on it, but I'd love to hear, having been there and done that and experiencing the other side of that wall, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I want to let that sink in for a second, because there's something really important there. I think when we're asking ourselves questions about, I've spent all this time building this, and now I'm going to let it go, or I'm thinking about letting it go. I think what's sort of behind that question is, will it all have been a waste? And I think, like I said earlier, is if you derived meaning from it for a time, if it gave you a sense of pride and accomplishment for a time, like, it wasn't a waste. It just already wasn't a waste. So I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it is sort of the implication that because something has worked for us in the past, it's going to continue working for us in the future. Yes. And, you know, it's kind of like an old pair of shoes. You know, they had a time where they worked really, really well, and they're still comfortable and you still slip them on. But if they're going to be, you know, if you're going to run a new race, they may not be the best shoes for you. And that may be not the best analogy here, but
I think it's a great one.
It just doesn't serve us anymore. And it's okay if something that we built and we were proud of and we put all this effort into, it's okay if that doesn't serve us anymore, because we're humans. We change. We continue to change. We're not the same people at 40 that we were when we were 20, and we're not the same people at 60 when we were when we were 40. And it's okay for us to change, and roles and industries, they shift, they evolve, but at the end of the day, they're a thing. They're a thing. And they either fit us or they don't. And it's okay to just say that this thing doesn't fit or serve anymore. And I'm really proud of what I accomplished while I was there. It's not an either or, it can be a both.
Yeah, it can be a both. And I think it should be, because we are human and nature evolves. So why wouldn't we?
Yeah. You know, and I mean, I also need to, I think it's worth acknowledging that I came to this as a white cis female who doesn't have children, who's married, whose husband is in a good place with his career. So I didn't have a lot of other factors operating in the background of making my decision. And I can't say that I don't know what I would have done if I had a few children, or if I were single, or if I didn't have the education and professional opportunities that I've had.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have made this kind of a leap. But that is the context that I was coming at it from. And I did have the opportunity to make a change without negatively impacting my family or putting my family at risk in any way. And I'm grateful for that. But I also acknowledge that not everybody is coming at it from that perspective. Right?
So everybody comes with their own unique story and journey, don't they? So you touched on the fact that the financial aspect was a consideration for you when you quit your job. Can we talk about money?
Sure.
I imagine that you had a certain income that you got used to. And, you know, obviously when you start your own new business, the money doesn't start to flow immediately. How did you sort of mitigate that cash flow, I guess? How did you make peace with the fact that you wouldn't be earning for a little while?
I'm still making peace with that.
Okay. It's in progress.
Yeah, it's in progress. Yeah, I was pretty well compensated for the role that I was in. I knew that I would make nothing to very little for a few years, and that was quite scary. Stephen and I, my husband, talked it over a fair bit, and we as a family were in a financial position to be able for me to perhaps not make an income for a couple of years and or make a minimal income or less income. And so that was a big part of it. I think knowing that we were in a financially secure place made it possible, to be honest. I don't know that I would have been able to make the same decision had we not been. But I think I just kept telling myself, like, I had my savings, I have my retirement funds, like all of that was coming with me. I think, you know, sometimes comparing ourselves to other people can be really challenging, and there's a lot of traps we can fall into, right? There are always going to be people who are making more than us. There's always going to be people who are making less than us. And somehow we all find a way to make it work. And so I just have this belief that somehow it's all going to work. And if I have to downsize, if I have to scale my lifestyle in a different way to meet a new income or meet a new financial demand, I'll find a way to do that, you know, and just kind of being willing to flex and adapt to it is the only way that I could figure out kind of how to get from there to here. But yeah, it is a daunting thing when you're looking at that kind of change.
I think when you're used to earning your own money, no matter how much your spouse may earn and contribute to the family income, I think when you're used to earning your own money and a certain amount of money, that is a challenge, and it's a mindset shift, and you have to adjust, don't you, in whatever way
Yeah, you know, and I think the conversations that we were having as a couple at the time were, we were asking ourselves the only questions we knew to ask. We were talking about the things that were top of mind at the time. And since then, a lot of other things have come up, you know, just in terms of, as you say, being financially independent, making your own money, spending your money according to, you know, it's your money.
Yeah.
And when it's a combined income and you're drawing from somebody else's contributions, that's challenging and leads to a whole other series of questions and conversations that we've taken up.
Yeah, the whole dynamic changes, doesn't it?
The dynamic really does change. And I think it has, you know, in full transparency, brought up a lot of insecurities for me. And I continue working through those, but I know I am on the precipice of that financial independence again, and I think that's exciting to see. So
super exciting.
Yeah.
And when we catch up in a year's time, you'll be telling me that you're earning more than Steve, which will be amazing. And we'll raise a glass of something. We're both drinking tea, I think, at the moment.
That's the deal. Yeah. We'll change the tea in for a glass of sparkling or something. Yeah.
Definitely. Okay. Well, I'll hold you to that.
Perfect.
So before I let you go, because I could fire another 600 questions at you without getting bored of hearing your answers, but I'm conscious of your time, and I just want to know what your definition of success is nowadays and how it's changed over time.
Joy. It's just joy. Like, you know, success can mean 1,000 different things, but I'm at a place in my life where I don't want to live my life according to what do I want to be? What do I want to do? I'm living my life in terms of how do I want to feel? And I want to feel joy every single day. And I want to bring joy to the world and help other people feel more joyful in some small way. And the validation and the excitement that I feel over this, the feedback that I get from clients, and when I watch a neighbor come by a client's house and say, oh my God, this is so beautiful, congratulations, da, da, da. And you see the client get so excited and proud of their space, and you see the joy there. And, you know, it's just, I don't know, that's what I want my life to feel like. And I want to live my life according to how it feels. And so that's success for me right now.
I love it. Well, you've made me feel very joyful today. So there's one tick. You can go back to bed. I know it's quite early in New York still. You can go back to bed now. You've achieved your spreading joy for today. So big tick.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks for the opportunity. It's been really lovely to talk to you. And yeah, I hope someone out there finds this useful.
I'm sure they will.
It is such a journey, but it's such a worthwhile one.
No, I've really enjoyed hearing your story and sharing it. And I'm sure there will be people listening that go, well, this is actually really inspiring, and I can follow suit, which is the whole point. Before we go, do you want to do a quick plug? Maybe let people know what your website is.
Yeah. So if you want to find out more about what we do, you can go out to valleyhalt.com. VALLEY HALT HALT.com, or follow us on Instagram at Valley_halt. And we are offering full service landscape and garden design services, as well as garden coaching. So really trying to help people figure out what this whole gardening thing is about. How to grow their own fruits and vegetables, how to take care of their space once we do the installation, because I think that's really key to the long-term sustainability of the projects that we're taking on.
Fantastic. And I'll put your web address and your Instagram in the show notes as well. So if anybody's curious to find out more, then
that would be great.
All right. Thank you so much, Sarah.
If you know someone who would enjoy this podcast, do share it with them and subscribe now so you never miss an episode.